Welcome to West USA Weekly, the podcast, your go-to source for everything real estate in Phoenix, Arizona. We're breaking down market trends, local insights, and the moves that matter most to Valley agents. Interviews, tips, and the latest from one of Arizona's top brokerages, all in one place. Let's dive in.
Good morning, West USA. Welcome to another edition of our Monday morning podcast. Appreciate everybody joining us today. A little sneak peek of what we got coming up today. Of course, we got Todd Menard here to give us our numbers. We got the Mortgage Minute by the Frederick team. Justin Frederick's in the house. And I'm going to share 3 strategies for those who have buyers waiting for rates to drop. And our very own Marge Lindsay is going to stop by for a little mayhem with Marge. So
that'll be fun.
It's going to be a good Monday.
Oh, when you scooted forward, it looked like you were about to say
after
something.
I get the podcast prepped, I usually scoot forward to then engage with you.
Maybe Justin can just pick you up and move you over.
He could.
Yeah, okay. All right. As always, if you got any comments or questions, please feel free to email us at podcast@westusa.com. All right, let's jump into some of the announcement. Understanding Agency Law of Arizona. 3 hours of agency CE credit in-person class in the Chandler office, and that is happening tomorrow from 1 to 4 p.m. All right, so Claudia, she's getting around, so she is going to be at the, I think the Scottsdale office.
Yeah,
Scottsdale office tomorrow between 9 and 3:30. So if you got any broker questions or just want to hang out and say hi to Claudia, she'll be around the Scottsdale office tomorrow. All right, Canva 101 class. Canva's, more and more agents are using Canva these days.
Yeah.
So nowadays, you don't have to necessarily rely on your graphic artist team, your title rep, or whatever the case is. You can start creating your own stuff. And so Justin's very own Amy Lanway is going to be doing a fantastic Canva class. So that is this Wednesday from 12 to 1:30, all the way out at the Mesa office. So for those of you agents at the Mesa office, just turn on your laptops today and start getting those updates done.
That's funny, Mikey.
Okay, Todd's got a remote CE class, 3 hours of contract law this Wednesday. And as always, all of these events can be found on the calendar. Just go to your dashboard or go to westusacalendar.com and you can get signed up for it. And navigating divorce transactions for realtors. So, divorces, man, those are always fun transactions. So everything that you need to know. We got a special class this Thursday from 10 to 1 p.m. And this is a CE class, so 3 hours of legal issues at the Scottsdale office. And I know this is a little bit in advance, but we just put this together. So for our annual 1031 tax exchange class, so we're going to be offering a CE class coming up later on in September. The QR code's there, so you can scan that if you want to get signed up ahead of time. But get a lot more and more questions from investors and sellers about how 1031 tax exchanges work. And then I guess if you don't know by now, Nick, you're just not going to know.
Well, hopefully you've heard of the Zillow Showcase. Maybe you haven't had an opportunity to use it yet because you haven't had a listing come through. This system is available to all West USA agents. There is no limit of time. Our contract with Zillow allowed every agent to have access to it, even though they are limiting it in the Phoenix metro area. West USA agents have their spot reserved. So if you do get a listing and you want to run it through Showcase, follow the QR code there at the bottom of the screen. We're seeing a lot of agents run their listings through it. We're almost at 100 listings total for the brokerage. A lot of agents are seeing a success as well. So offers and showings are coming from the Showcase platform.
All right, Todd, what's going on in the market these days?
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Today we're going over the Greater Phoenix metropolitan housing statistics for the week ending August 25th. Let's get right into our numbers. 81 days closed on market this past week, a 4.70 month supply. Absorption rate was at 21.27. Average list price this past week, $698,436. Average sale price this past week, $561,966. And the list price to sale price retention was at 97.4. Active inventory continuing to take little hits, ever so slightly, down 24,170 available units. Pending is at 3883 and closed units at 3980 for the month. Looking at new listings taken, 1,827, a little bit short, but better than we did last week. Days on market for active inventory is at 123.8 and for closed at 81. Looking in the lower left-hand side, where you get to look at the price ranges in each category, you get to see the number of units that are available in that category, the days on market for that category, and then, of course, what percentage of the entire MLS inventory that category represents. And you can see there's a couple of areas in which are in red, which indicate a contraction. So under 400,000, between 600 to 2 million, actually, pretty large range there. And then 3 to 4 million had a little bit of a hit. That brings the actual $0 to $600,000 inventory to 68.07% of the entire MLS. 600 to 1 million is at 20.16, down just a bit, and 1 million and up is at 11.77. So the document that I think is always the best one for us to talk about and look at is this one, because it gives everybody the information you need to have a conversation with someone else, because you get to compare the numbers. And that, of course, gives you an opportunity to be an expert in your industry versus someone who may just have one set of numbers instead of being able to compare. But again, we're looking for 2,400 listings a week. If way over on the left-hand side, you'll see this thing called ROT, this column, and that's rules of thumb. That's where we'd like to be. And so 2,400 really is what we've been continuously looking for. 1,827 is where we are right now. But some good news. If you take a look in the center two columns, the colored columns, you'll see 1,747 is the number of new listings taken this same week last year, and 1,647 the year before. 1,827 is a 5% increase. That's a huge number. So although it's not our 2,400 desired number, it's saying more sellers are putting their properties in the MLS than did last year, and that's a good sign. So when we look at the inventory at 24,170, it's made up of 608 coming soon. Single family detached is 18,481. 2,735 new home construction properties. 23,816 of the entire MLS is non-distressed. Looking at pending is at 3,883. That's up 3.8%, but look across to last year's numbers, 3,345 and 3,400. There are 400 to 500 more buyers in the marketplace right now than there were last year this same period. Now, this is the second week in a row we've been talking about this. You maybe remember I said a couple of weeks ago, could the summer market be late and coming now? Could the talk of interest rates lowering, which haven't happened yet? And remember, this is resale inventory, not new home construction. New home construction doesn't report into the MLS. But this is a very, very good sign. You'll probably notice that you're getting some more activity on your listings than you've had before. But make no doubt about it, we are significantly in this transition market, but it's no longer heading towards a buyer's market. It is now heading back into a seller's market. Your inventory is continuing 6 weeks in a row to have contracted, reduced numbers. And for the last 3 weeks in a row, we've had an increase in the number of people coming into the marketplace. So something to really take a look at as we're having conversation. Transition is still the correct word, though, to use. It's not a buyer's market. So 3,980 is where we are closed month to date. That's pretty close. Look at last year. We were at 3,973. We're ahead right this moment of last year, and we haven't even gone into the closing week yet. That's still this coming week right now. So 3,944 is where we were exactly this point last year. 4,686, so we're slacking as it relates to a couple of years back. But again, we only look at last year and are we doing better than last year, because we all kind of still feel the pain of last year. So anything we can do to help increase that is a good thing. We're at 4.7 months supply, so that's the reason why we're still closer to the 4 than we are the 6. So we're still in a transition market. We were at a 2.31 month supply last year. Average list price, average sale price, and the median. Look at the median, 400. The last number there, 449,000 versus 450. So again, there's significant stability in what is actually closing. Is actually in those price ranges. Those are where the predominant numbers are. So I like looking at the average sale price and the average list price just for this past week, just to see where, and then look at where it was last week. Again, the houses between basically, on average again, so that's taking your $1 million homes and your low-end homes and dividing by the number of homes sold. But the 449, the median tells the tale. It's $1,000 less right at this particular moment. If that number was 435, that would be indicative of a price issue where the sellers are not able to retain enough of their list price. So right here, list price to sale price retention, they're retaining 97.4 over this past week versus 97.04 the week before. So they're about 0.5% more the sellers are retaining. We'll continue to watch this number. 97.8 is the number that we've been averaging for since I've been doing this since 1998, recording these numbers. I mean, that 97.8 has been the average. So that's what we're looking for it to be. But if it gets up into that price, if it goes too far over that, we are now back in the seller's market. So that's what's going on at this particular moment.
All right, appreciate it, Todd, and we'll bring in Justin into the conversation. What's going on with the rates these days? We know Jerome Powell had a big speech on Friday.
Yeah, Jackson Hole.
Yeah.
So basically, he's clearly showing that we're going to be reducing rates in September. That's where his head was Friday, and Friday we had an 1/8% reduction in mortgage rates based on 39 basis points increase in mortgage-backed securities. So here's the thing. A lot of people were thinking, all right, well, once they reduce the Fed rate, mortgage rates are going to react. The reality is mortgage rates work off of expectations of what the Feds are going to do. And that's why we saw an 1/8% on Friday, because now the expectation is to reduce rates. If they don't reduce rates, you're going to see mortgage rates go up for sure. There's a chance if they reduce the rate by just a quarter, we could see mortgage rates increase slightly on September 17th. So,
fantastic.
I mean, the good news is it's baked into the rates currently. So you don't have to wait. It's there right now. Taking advantage right now. And there's a lot of information that's going to be coming out before that September 17th that could change their mind. So we have low rates right now. I'd say move forward. So yeah, we had a good week last week. As you can see, it does look like the rates slightly went up from the week before. However, this was printed out on Friday. The rates got better. So this information was gathered on Friday, which was taken from Thursday, if that makes sense. Cool. All right, so today we're talking about concessions because concessions is such a hot topic right now. We've been getting a lot of agents asking us about concessions. So maximum concessions, this is for conventional loans. For a primary residence and second home, if you have less than 10% down, your max concessions for your buyer or a seller is 3% of the purchase price. 10% to 25% down is max concessions of 6%. And greater than 25% down is 9% concessions. A lot of people don't know that, but yes, you can get 9% and we can go deep.
So here's a stupid thing, not that everybody needs 9%, but if somebody had 24 point something percent and that extra 1% difference that would have brought them up to over 25 is like $5,000. They'd be able to have available 3 additional potential additional percentage concessions for that $1,000.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Investment properties max is 2% regardless of down payment. So keep that in mind. Allowable use, closing costs, prepaid items, temporary or permanent rate buy downs, upfront PMI, just like we talked last week, a single premium, and that will help lower the monthly payment. It cannot go towards down payment. So FHA loans, regardless, wow, that was a little messy right there. Maximum concessions is 6% of the purchase price. Same thing, allowable to pay closing costs, prepaid items such as taxes, insurance, rate buy downs, temporary and permanent, upfront mortgage insurance as well, not allowed to pay for down payment. VA loans, this is one that there's a lot of gray areas here. Maximum concessions is 4% of the purchase price. However, 4% is in addition to standard closing costs and up to 2 points in interest rates. So the standard closing costs and 2 points buy down does not count towards concessions.
And this is important because builders lenders don't understand this.
No.
And I keep having to give
come to me, I'll give
so
you
much
guidelines.
pushback
Yep.
because they're offering X amount of concessions and then they don't understand how to read the VA
That's right.
guidelines, and they're taking away concessions because they feel like they've exceeded the allowable amount when in actuality it's not the case.
Yeah, and just for all you agents out there, if you have a problem with a new build, call me. I will call with you, even though I'm not involved in the transaction. I'll make sure your buyer's taken care
Well,
of.
I'm not sure. Should you say if you have a problem with it, maybe just say to them, hey, if you have, and I'm not trying to make your phone ring
No, you're
too
fine.
much, but I'm just saying, if you are doing business with a VA buyer and you are doing business in a new home community, they owe it to their buyer to call you.
100%. 100%. So here's some good stuff here. Allowable uses, closing costs, prepaid items, rate buy downs, VA funding fee. Here's the big one: pay off buyers' debts, collections, judgments. It's unique with VA. A lot of lenders don't understand this. This is something that we can do to help qualify for more, and also help our veterans out a little bit. If you have a collection that's been sticking there or a judgment, it's nice to get rid of it. Now, you can't close the loan unless the judgment's taken care of, but we can get that taken care of through the VA loan. So a lot of lenders won't even pre-qualify somebody with that judgment there. I'll put it on the pre-qualification. Hey, this is contingent upon paying off the judgment. Seller can do that for them. It's not allowable for down payment again on VA loans. So just keep that in mind. Now, here's a sheet that we offer over at Fairway. I'm just throwing this out there. You don't have to have us co-branded on there. But if you'd like
if one of those have got to go, I'm going with you and leaving Amy. I'm just saying.
I agree. Yeah, so if you need this or you want a copy of this document, there's Amy's email address right there, and you can reach out to her and get a copy of this for your records.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah.
So, at least for me, how does a buyer negotiate having a seller help the buyer with their costs of compensation, and how does it relate to concession? Does that make sense?
So you're saying, like, how does a buyer get the seller to pay for
Not
their
so much
agents?
how do they get it, but a buyer, an agent. To Mike's point, a buyer's agent is responsible for drafting the contract and packaging their buyer, listening to what their buyer needs. We know that the buyer may need assistance because they don't have all the funds necessary to include all the closing costs, all the down payment, and the realtor compensation. So we know there may be. So in the past, a seller could exceed in the most recent past, the maximum allowable seller concessions if you could document that a portion of those concessions that had exceeded, all of the ones that had exceeded, were because of the buyer's compensation.
So that's not exactly. I mean, everything's up for negotiation.
Sure
I mean, but when it comes to the guidelines are specific to this is the maximum allowable concessions. Now, if you get more concessions and there's a portion of that's going to be going to the buyer's agent compensation, it's all up to negotiation. If it's already agreed upon, we can change documents to make it work. So I'm not going to say that that's not going to work, but at the end of the day, when we get to the closing table, the maximum allowable concessions is what was shown on there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, as always, Justin, appreciate it. And I just say, I'm in the habit of, regardless of my buyer buying a new build or not, if they're going to buy a new build, they're going to talk to you first anyways, because not all those deals that the builders are offering are, you got to read. There's a lot of fine print that goes into it. And so it's not always necessarily the best deal on the market.
Well, the psychological part of it makes you feel like it's the best deal out there. But in reality, there's a lot of times where we're catching up with it and like, hey, this isn't, we're beating them by the end. Up front, they might be looking like they're beating us pretty good. That's why we stay in contact with them. Yeah. But thank you guys.
All right, appreciate it as always, Justin. And there is Justin's information. All right, we're going to jump into the 3-pack. So we've been talking about rates and wherever we're at in the market. And so I feel like we're on, it's almost like baby watch, but it's rate watch. And a lot of us have a lot of buyers out there that just are waiting. They're waiting to see rates at a certain level before they jump into the game. And so that's what I want to talk about today is is what does that process look like? Okay, a lot of smart people are understanding they can go out and do rate buy downs and are in the game, and I think are taking advantage of the market. I don't think we have as many buyers in the market as we would if we saw a significant drop in rates, and I think that's common sense. So the first one is go through your CRM system, go through all your list of potential buyers, and identify those that you think are waiting for a certain number as far as the interest rates go, that are going to make them want to jump in the game. And so know what their magic number is and call and ask. It's a great conversation starter. Todd, I know you've kind of, been watching the market, whatever the case is. Where do you need to see rates before you get excited about jumping in the game? Is it 5.75? Is it 6.25? What number is your magic number? You can do it. I was thinking about you could do a Facebook poll. There's all ways you could creatively do this. You could send texts out, emails out, whatever the case is. But this is the question. And when you get to point to number 3, you're going to see where the true magic is in this. But this is a discussion that I'm having right now with all of my buyers that I've not been able to get off of that fence. I want to know what that number is.
Yeah, and I'd say to there are some buyers out there that are just needing a number because they need to qualify at a particular number.
Correct.
So your follow-up questions need to also include, has anything changed in your income or debt since I've talked to you last? When was the last time you talked to Justin? Maybe it would be worth having another phone call with him. But to the fact of what's the magic number, I'm always cautious about the number itself, and I certainly probably wouldn't recommend one up front, like 5.75 or something. I would just say, what is it that's holding you back, and how? It's kind of like you're at a listing appointment, and you ask a seller, what would be the worst thing that could happen if you list with me today? I know you want to wait, but what's the worst thing that could happen if you listed with me today? In other words, try to bring out the fear of why they're holding back with those numbers too.
So the magic number, most consumers probably don't know what that means. What do you need for a rate? Well, I need a low rate. They're constantly seeing on the media, on the news, on social media that the Fed chairman is going to drop rates. They don't know what that means. To be completely honest with you, and all due respect, most agents don't know what that means.
Correct.
Justin touched on it in his portion today, and I think that kind of got skipped over in our questions with him. This is the time to call your consumer because they think they're waiting for September for the rate to drop. As Justin explained, and this is what we see with mortgage rates don't ebb and flow with the rate dropping. It's the expectation of what the market's going to do. We've seen a rate drop already, and maybe we're going to see rates drop a little bit more, but now is the time to have that conversation. So engaging with them early on in the process of, what do you think about mortgage rates? Do you have any idea? Have you talked to our lender yet and had that conversation? It's a good conversation starter, and I do think that a Facebook poll, kind of getting the people that are around your sphere of influence to give you feedback on what they think a good rate, quote unquote, is a really great way to have that conversation.
Yeah, whether they know exactly what their magic number is, I think you guys might be overthinking it. The goal is to engage in conversation,
Correct.
Know where their head's at. I would say 75 to 80% of people out there, they don't have a specific number, but they would say they're waiting to see a 5 in front.
Fair enough.
But now I'm having this conversation with them because now we're going to be on rate watch. And then whatever number it is, put it in your CRM. And I'm thinking about even create tags, inside your CRM. I don't know if they're called tags in Wise Agent, but at the different interest rate levels, so that at any time, if I wake up and rates are at 6%, I can do a search in my CRM and say, who said it needs to be at 6%? And then when there's a rate drop, I'm going to search my CRM based on point number 1 of all these conversations that I've had. Maybe even, I hate to say it, maybe if it's even just a spreadsheet. But I would still use your CRM system and know who's waiting for what. And point number 1, you might even get to different conversations. It may not even be about rates. It could be all about different things, but we're creating the dialogue with them. But if Todd and Lynn said, if they knew for a fact it's got to be 5.75%, and we wake up one day and rates are at 5.75%, I should be able to go into my CRM system and see who's told me in the past it should be at 5.75%, and I'm going to give them a call and say, Todd, you told me you were waiting for this day. The day has come. So now what excuse are you going to use to hold back?
Well,
but let's go out
the prices have gone
shopping.
up too high because
No.
I waited too long. No, yeah. So I think that's the other piece of this is the fact, and I want to just clarify. You know, this is all about communicating with potential buyers. This is all about having a new conversation with people that have given you an obstacle that you can't fix right now. But yet, at the same token, someday when that magical number appears, maybe you can fix. But this just gives you the excuse to re-engage. Maybe they know somebody who's interested in real estate. But to the track and call part, again, you're using this as a purpose for having more and more conversations with people that you already know, and you already know at some particular point they're going to engage. But I would say that if it were me, I would want to put a buyer in a situation at some particular point of a conversation where they now knew what the difference was between what today's interest rate means as a monthly payment and what their go-to rate is, that the Todd and Lynn 5.75 rate, so they really know what the difference is, because in the meantime, these prices are going to continue to go up, and that's a problem.
Again, it's having, like you said, Mike, I mean, the whole point of this is conversation. We're having different conversations with different types of buyers, with different types of sellers. We need to be able to give them the better information than they're getting outside of us. We need to be that expert. And you should be working with your lender on this. Lenders have CRMs as well. Lenders are having conversations with clients. You should be talking to these clients at the same time about different things. The lender should be reaching out as well. They're their client also. If they see that the rates are about to drop with their magic ball, what they've been doing, they're the expert in this. They're reaching out to your clients too, and then you're following up. Hey, I heard you had a conversation with Justin. Super excited. We're about to get to a better possible marketplace. Let's go start looking at homes again.
Yeah, and this would be something I would do. This would be a great conversation to have at open houses.
Yeah.
Have talks about interest rates. Yeah, I'm waiting for interest rates to be here and so forth. All right, so can I get your name and number? So when we get to that number, I'm going to give you a call. But the third one, and the reason why I'm doing this, I need to get I don't care what that number is. Just give me a number, because I'm going to say to you, okay, Todd, you're waiting for 5.75%. What if I told you today we could go out, find a home, negotiate through seller concessions, and I can get you that 5.75% today?
You can?
And exactly. And if I could do that and we can negotiate that, and you're telling me you've got to have a 5.75%, and I can go out and I can negotiate it today, have the seller pay for it, would you buy today? And then just go out and take them shopping. We got, the 15-year conventional, the rates are really good. And we just got somebody into, with the seller paying for it, a 15-year conventional permanent rate, 4.75%. Okay?
Yeah. Permanent.
This is the problem. People are so fixated on the interest rates and not understanding that we can go out and we can negotiate and get them that lower rate today.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to say on that, Mike, because you just nailed it. The point is that you did. I had to give you that. Had to give you the high five.
We didn't get to
on
see
that.
point 3.
This is point 3.
I know, but if we would have seen point 3, we could have navigated this journey together.
Oh,
But
no,
you were hiding it from
I
us.
like it looking really smart.
I know.
amongst you
I
three.
know. That was nice.
Yeah, no, but I think ultimately the fact is that there's a lot of ways to get to that ultimate decision, and yet here's the thing. If you didn't have the conversation, you never would have been able to, create that deal. That's number one. Number two, Justin did give you an awesome reason to call people, because most people think interest rates react to the Fed. They don't react to the conversation. They react to the actual rate drop or increase. So that's a huge point.
And again, it goes back to all the conversations. They're seeing and hearing not from you. And those that are talking to their lender, talking to their realtor consistently, when the conversation comes up, and it will, about rates and the market and the economy, as they're having conversations with friends and family and loved one, well, I know you were saying this, but I talked to my agent, my lender, they're saying this. So I was able to get locked here, or they're showing me this, and it just gets your name being used when they're having conversations with friends and family and loved ones about who the actual experts are. And it's not those that are on social media. It's not those that are the talking heads talking about national numbers that are trying to just get people to clickbait on their articles.
Yeah, and Todd, I know you're being facetious, but when I outlined that, you're like, oh, you could really do that?
Yeah, no,
That's what we're hearing.
That's
I mean,
what we
like when
want,
we're
yeah.
sitting down and talking to buyers, they're like, really? That's a possibility?
That's the aha moment. That's what you're looking for in every single conversation you have.
Yeah.
Really?
All righty.
I can do that.
All right. Well,
Here we go.
Bum,
Boom, boom.
I was thinking for the last 3 minutes, I've been thinking really hard for a joke, and
Yeah.
I don't really have one outside of the fact that we're talking about interest rates, Marge, and when you started like contracts are on papyrus paper, right? I mean, I don't know. We were what kind of lending institutions we were doing, but Marge, it has been so long, and so great to see you. And we have had a lot of new agents join West USA and be part of our podcast, and may not be as familiar with Mayhem with Marge, but that's where she puts down some scenarios, and Todd and I pretty much duke it out. But welcome.
Thank you. I've got to tell you, with you making fun of my age again. Yesterday at church, somebody just jokingly said something about, how many years have you been in that real estate business? And I was proud to tell him, 52. And honestly, everybody's sitting right around me there and said, Marge, we weren't even born then.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all of yours would fit. They could relate better to what you're saying. So anyway, it's fun to be here. But I've got to tell you, in preparation for this, the last time I was here with the two of you, actually three, but Nick's always polite.
Thank you, Marge.
Wow.
No, you guys, my recollection is you got them all right. And I don't want you getting them all right.
That's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure Todd won last time.
Oh, thank you.
Not true.
No, he's just saying because Mike always goes away the winner. So
Yeah.
No,
Doesn't matter what
as a
their
matter of
numbers
fact,
are.
I keep track. It's in my CRM system. And so I looked at it this morning, and I've noticed that Todd's never won.
yeah, well, there you go.
Well, we had some fun, or I did, because I thought, no, I really want to stump you. So I do have a co-conspirator on a couple of these, and I will not mention Dean's name.
All right.
However, I said, share with me a couple of the things that you, from a broker standpoint, are getting. And
Dean calls me for broker questions. So I don't know why. Yeah. So I'm the secret behind Dean's knowledge
I
base
think
over
Dean
there.
just fell off his chair.
yeah,
Literally.
Okay, so not true. But
he's going to say in another life. Yeah.
all
okay.
right. All right. So I did read this one ahead of time because you sent me the email and said, are these okay? And so then I started reading this one. I'm like, I can't read these, so I don't know whether the other ones are okay or not. So, but full disclosure, I did read this one. Didn't look up the answer, but I did read it.
Okay.
All right. So scenario one, the buyer's agent puts in seller to pay 3% compensation on the buyer-broker agreement to show property. Line 19 to get their buyer to sign the form. Okay, so they sign line 19 to get their buyer to sign the form. All right, so I'm assuming there's no buyer-broker exclusive agreement in this, just the buyer-broker showing agreement.
Yep.
Seller compensation addendum was submitted with an offer for 3%. The seller countered at 2%, and the buyer accepted the counter offer. How much compensation is the buyer entitled to? So the buyer, the agent, is entitled to 3%, but only entitled to 2% from the seller. So it's up to that agent to work out a deal and remind the buyer that if they were going to hold the buyer's feet to the fire, that the buyer still owed them 1%.
I have to like that idea.
Oh, Dean, I'm going to love you forever. You guys are wrong. That's it. From now on, he's going to become my co-conspirator. And actually, I loved the way he worded it when we were talking about this, because the answer is they get 0. And the reason they get 0.
That's line 19.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have an addenda that modifies, and the buyer's agent failed to put an objectively ascertainable amount, which is required by the settlement, And based on the statute of frauds, that a contract must be signed by the party it's being enforced upon. In this case, the seller didn't sign the buyer-broker agreement to show property, making it prohibited by MLS rules and invalid for the buyer's agent to collect any compensation.
So what line number on that? Do you have a buyer broker to show?
You bet.
Okay, what line number is the compensation on?
The compensation itself would be on line 17.
Okay, there you go.
But-
Okay, no, I just wanted to see because that's what. So not having the document in front of you, everyone imagined, maybe even some of the people on the call today, that the 3% belonged on line 19, but it doesn't. It belongs on where the broker compensation line is. And
Correct.
if you put, so the lesson is if you put nothing in on line 17,
You're entitled
you're
to
entitled to nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes total sense.
So then what is line 19 then?
It's
Line
the
19 is
other.
just other.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
additional information
Okay.
underneath. Yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah.
Why.
Okay, but you also mentioned that the seller didn't sign it. The sellers aren't signing these
No,
documents.
seller
So-
doesn't sign the buyer broker to show property.
No, the seller doesn't sign them. However, the seller in this particular case says, here's what we're willing to offer. But because they didn't sign anything agreeing to it in any other manner, at this point, then the buyer broker still gets nothing because there was nothing requested properly on
Right.
the form.
Okay, so but
That money goes to the
but
buyer.
if that 3% was included in line 17, our answers would have been correct, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go with we were right, Todd.
No, well, that's why I brought. That's why I should have. When I saw line 19, my question was, okay, I'd like to have the document in front of me, and then I said, oh, I don't. Well, then that must be the compensation line, and it wasn't. So I should have gone with
Yeah,
that.
Dean sent two
anticipating-
clarifying messages. The first clarifying message was that he has never and shall never take any advice from Mike Weinstein regarding broker questions. The second note was the key point here is seller to pay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
Well,
no.
yeah.
The question was how much compensation is the buyer entitled to? So if line 17 had that 3% in there, then we were right because my point is the seller then is paying only what's reflected on the SEA.
Well, the whole burden comes back to how you fill out the form,
Yeah.
how you understand the form, and so forth. Because we said specifically that the buyer's agent wrote on there,
Yeah, the
seller
BBA
to
is invalid.
pay 3% compensation. And and Dean, I love you.
All right, number 2. This is gonna be fun. I'm leaving. All right.
Now I just know the length to which Dean's doing this. So yeah, I'll be
exactly.
a lot more alert now.
All right.
Thank you, Dean. I do appreciate that.
All
by
right.
the way.
So I don't do a lot of rentals, so this is going to be a hard one for me.
Where's the fan?
A tenant's agent shows their client a home for rent after getting their client to sign the tenant broker exclusive employment agreement for $300 on line 30. Okay, the tenant, yeah,
Yeah, he's reaching for line 30. Let's see.
the tenant sends an application to the listing agent with a SEA compensation addendum for $500. The applicant is accepted and the lease is agreed upon. When the tenant moves in, how much compensation can the tenant's brokerage collect? I don't know what line 30 is, so I can't
It's
read
the
it without.
dollar amount. You have a percentage amount or a dollar amount. It's the dollar amount.
Okay, so go ahead, Todd.
Well, I have you answer while I read the actual scenario now that I've looked at the document.
Well, okay. The tenant broker, I would say the brokerage is assuming that there's nothing funky with line 30. The tenant exclusive employment agreement for $300, and the maximum amount that the brokerage is allowed to collect would be $300 because that's what's on the employment agreement. Doesn't matter what's on the SCA because the SCA would be higher.
In this particular case, the SCA was higher. Yeah. For
Now,
500.
you just read what I highlighted. So if you didn't know that,
Oh,
you
I-
can't answer. You don't get the point.
Where's the red? Oh, I didn't read that.
Yeah. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm going to give Dean and me credit on this one too. And that's because, yes, it did say $300 on line 30. They had an SCA, which included compensation now at $500. So how much will they get paid? And the answer is $500. And the why is line 32 of that tenant broker exclusive employment agreement form says, or the compensation broker receives from the landlord or landlord's broker, whichever is greater.
Yeah, that's the uniqueness of the tenant agreement.
Okay. All right. I was wrong on that one too, but I've never seen it. I've never used it. So obviously it's different than the buyer broker exclusive agreement.
That's Dean's point here.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing as we go through here, there are a lot of forums out there and a lot of things that we don't know, we don't do, we haven't been involved with. And so when we come to some of these forums, we draw some assumptions without picking up the phone and calling the broker. I mean, and honestly, when you have something, don't ever be hesitant.
Yeah.
I mean, honest to goodness,
Well, obviously don't pick up the phone and call me.
I do appreciate that we've clarified that today. I think we're at Marge and Dean too. Todd and Mike are
I did. I honestly, I did. I laughed and I sent this back to Dean and I said, I'm going to be loving you. This is wonderful because my whole goal was to really stump you guys. Okay, so let's go to scenario 3.
Yeah, next month, next time you're on, let's have these from Kyle.
Kyle would have, but Kyle's on vacation.
I like these. These are good. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Buyer goes to a new. Okay, here we go.
There's your sign.
Buyer goes to a new build with buyer's agent. Okay, so agent's there I'm going to assume on the first showing. The buyer has a buyer broker exclusive employment agreement with the agent for 3% of the sales price compensation in place. While signing the purchase contract, the buyer and agent figure out how much the compensation is going to be and redo the buyer broker agreement for 4%. How much compensation will the buyer's brokerage receive? Well, that just depends on whether the builder has seen the buyer broker agreement. If the builder has never seen the buyer broker exclusive agreement, it's a possibility the brokerage will get the full 4%, but the agent is only entitled to the 3%.
Okay. So my interpretation runs along the line of, first of all, typically what's the builder paying the compensation based upon? Because the builder always has, sometimes it's based upon the base price less incentives. So the amount of money that the builder gets, they would have to be determined from that perspective. We don't like it. The amount that you put on the buyer broker, the exclusive buyer broker agreement, is the maximum amount of compensation that you are entitled to. Many agents believe that they can go create all these addendums or modify the documents to increase for more compensation, when in actuality, the original amount is what your maximum amount is supposed to be. So erring on the side of caution, knowing that Dean wrote this, I would just have to justify the fact that, first of all, as West USA, we don't like it. We don't believe an agent should increase the compensation beyond that. That's part of what this whole issue is about. So I'm going to say that it's either going to be 3% of the sale price compensation, or it's going to be the maximum amount paid by the builder, and then the builder would then pay that amount. If there was anything over that 3%, that amount would go to the buyer.
Yeah, but that's not how builders work. Okay.
Well, no, I'm saying the builder's going to pay what the builder's going to pay, period. I'm just saying that once the builder's established what they're going to pay, if it's more than 3%, the agent's not going to get the more. That's going to be rebated back to the buyer.
Well, I can tell you this: if the builder does request a copy of the buyer broker agreement, and with the builders, those are the only scenarios that I am providing, because what are you going to do? Fight it out with the builder? They got their they got their policies. So if the builder sees it that the buyer broker exclusive agreement is for 3%, then they're going to only pay 3%, and that is it. And the buyer's not going to get the balance of it. But but what I was going with is the agent themselves is only entitled to 3% of the sales price. So my question was, if the builder does not see the buyer broker exclusive agreement and the title company doesn't see it, and the title company just has instructions from the contract to pay the brokerage 4%, then what does West USA do with that extra percent?
Okay, let me share with you.
Yeah.
And yes, did I bring a copy of this? I did. See, Dean, I knew that they were going to question your brilliance. Anyway.
Oh, we're not questioning his brilliance. We're trying to figure him out.
No, no, and honestly, in the buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement form, on lines 101 to 104, it states, "This agreement and any addenda and attachments shall constitute the entire agreement between buyer and broker, and shall supersede any other written agreements." Written agreements between buyer and broker, and can be modified only by a writing signed by buyer and broker. Then it does become invalid or unenforceable with some of these provisions, and could not affect some of the others. And Dean's answer was this: although the buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement has language that a new submitted BBEEA supersedes previous BBAs, which is that line 101 to 104, the fact that the new BBA wasn't signed until after viewing the property is what prohibits the additional compensation to be paid to the broker. So, like, we're not going to fight with the builders and this situation at all, but it has to be done before. That's what the settlement said, and that's what they're enforcing.
So my point where the agent's only entitled to the 3% was accurate. The only thing that complicated the issue was that typically the builders don't pay on base. But this would be an example where we're looking at resale and new homes. Maybe the agent writes 3% into the compensation line, and yet the builder now is offering 4% because it's a spec or a bonus or something like that. And so the agent thinks they want that extra 1%, and so they create an addendum, but we're really only entitled to the original 3%.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
because
so
signing
then-
it after is wrong.
So then, I mean, can we say we were right? Because we said 3%. How much compensation will the buyer's broker receive?
Nick? give
Yeah,
him-
I'm going to give that to them.
I was going to say,
I think they
let's-
get that one.
let's-
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give them that one only because they said 3, even if it was for the wrong reasons. But they said no.
I did say that you
No,
can't
you
write a second
did.
one.
Okay, but then back to my question: what happens when the West USA, in my scenario, builder is not aware of the buyer broker agreement? Okay, and we have a buyer broker agreement in place that says 3%, and West USA now receives 4%. What does West USA do with that percent?
You know, that's. Go ahead, Nick.
Dean?
So if we do receive a check that is higher than the buyer broker, the agent is notified. We generally send it back to title to have it recut for the proper amount, and the agent works with title to make sure we get the appropriate amount. Because we, as a brokerage, are held to the standard of the settlement to make sure that the payments are done accurately.
Now, if the amount was less than the 3%, then of course that would have been on the settlement sheet where the buyer came to the table with the difference.
Yeah. All right, scenario 4. All right, so we're 1 and 2, Todd.
Yep.
During the inspection, I feel like we're not even it's not me against you anymore. This is just
No, it's Todd and Mike against Dean and Marge now.
yeah. This has really took a turn for the worse.
That's because you both beat me the last 2 times I was on here.
During the inspection period, the buyer retained a home inspector who produced a written report identifying a property defect that the seller wasn't aware of before. The buyer followed the instructions in the AAR residential resale purchase contract and gave the seller a copy of the inspection report. The buyer also sent a Binzer stating that he was going to cancel the contract and specified the reason as identified the inspection report. The seller put the property back on the market and received a second offer. The buyer broker asked if the sellers had any previous inspection reports. Is the seller obligated to disclose the previous inspection report, and must the seller provide a copy of that inspection report if it is requested? I'm just going to say to question number 1, yes. To question number 2, no. 1, yeah, you have to disclose that there was a previous inspection report if asked.
So the other question is, did the seller? It's not alluding to it, so it's probably not even part of the answer. But did the seller update the SPDS according to what the terms of the new SPDS that caused the buyer to cancel? And hopefully they had. But at the end, I'm going to like your answer on the is he obligated? And the answer would be yes. And as far as must the seller provide a copy, the answer is no. It doesn't belong to that. It belongs to the person who paid for it.
Okay, is the seller obligated to disclose the previous inspection report? No.
What?
No.
Damn.
No. And why? And must they provide a copy of it if requested? The answer is no.
Yeah.
But the reason that I'm saying no on the first one, it doesn't say if asked. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not talking into the microphone. Thanks, Nick. It doesn't say if they asked, are they obligated? Because that's a question
No, it
that
says
many
the buyer
agents,
broker asked if the seller has had any previous inspection reports.
Okay.
So meaning it's back on the market.
Yes, I did. That doesn't mean I have to give it to you. No, I didn't.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you have to give it to them. I'm saying if I know that there was a inspection from a previous buyer, and now a new buyer comes along, and that other agent says, "Okay, was it ever under contract, and was there ever any inspections that are done?" You're saying I can just lie and admit that?
No, I'm not saying you
You're
can
not
lie.
obligated to disclose.
No.
If asked,
No, what you are obligated to do, and actually this was one that came up in one of the CRMS classes, and in checking with counsel, that's exactly what we wanted to do here. They said, no, you don't have to disclose that you had previous inspection reports. What you are obligated to disclose is any material issues or things that might have been brought up or pointed out.
okay,
in
but
there.
how I'm reading the question, and now we're kind of getting into semantics.
Right.
I'm reading this as the other agent has asked if there was any previous inspection reports. I'm viewing that as a yes or no question. I'm reading the first question that you have here is the seller obligated to disclose it. I'm reading this as my response to the buyer broker's question.
So basically, if you have an inspection report on a property the buyer cancels, the seller's obligation is to disclose material facts versus Hill versus Jones. So the question is, where did you disclose it? Well, I updated my SPDS. Okay, so everything that was disclosed on the inspection report that was of a material fact, you disclosed. Yes. Okay, well then you don't. That's it. That's really the obligation falls on the seller to take whatever they learned from the buyer's inspection report that they may have known or maybe didn't know, and make sure the SPDS includes that updated information.
But again, in this question, if the other agent asks me if the seller's had any previous inspection reports, what do I say?
Well, basically what they're saying is, and I let me just share this. I think we, West USA, and I think our brokers at West USA would say, if you're asked, disclose it.
Okay,
You know,
that's
if-
how I
if-
read.
if
That's how I was
something
reading that.
in here.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is that from a legal perspective, which sometimes gets muddied, at least as far as we're concerned, they're saying you don't have to go out and voluntarily say that. What you can
Right.
say is,
Understand that.
the seller has, had the property on the market. They've had prior offers. Any and everything that they've learned through this process has been updated on the seller property disclosure statement.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Is in this scenario, I'm now the agent.
Okay.
I'm the listing agent. And now I am aware of this material defect. I know my seller is aware of the material defect. And my seller says, don't disclose it, and I'm not updating the spuds. What do I do?
You have an obligation, a legal obligation to disclose it. And you tell him,
how,
sorry.
how do I do that?
Yeah, you just tell him, sorry, but you're giving me instruction that is not legal.
Correct.
It isn't something that I can abide by. And I'll tell you, I have to disclose it. Because if you don't, I must. And I'm not willing to put my license on the line.
Okay.
For non-disclosure of material fact. But even more important, it's not just me. I want to protect you. I don't want you to be sued down the road, because if I were ever subpoenaed to come in and I'd say, oh, did they know? Yes, they knew. Here's what happened. Here's what what the circumstances were. It's going to be far worse. Not to mention, the mental trauma and everything, and the legal expenses that are going to be involved in not disclosing.
All right, so
it.
then what if the seller chooses to fire me? And let's say the listing, expires. Let's say the timing just fits perfect, right? And I get fired, and then he goes and lists with another agent. I know, but what do I do with it? Can I do anything with that information?
That was an interesting question that came up in a case where I served as an expert witness. And the answer was yes, I can, and yes, I should disclose that to the other agent because it is something that I know it is a material fact.
And it's not confidential information. You can't disclose any other any confidential information, even though the other agent is now under a confidentiality agreement.
You know,
with
the
them
only
also.
thing that I would say here, though, is be sure you know you're correct with what you're disclosing.
Well, I just had one where we were representing the buyer. I've told a story, and it ended up with like $55,000 worth of foundation repairs. We had an engineer out there. We knew. I mean, I had documentation. And seller offered my buyer $2,500. So do the math. So we walked. And the agent goes, I'm probably going to get fired because he's going to want to put this back on the market. And so that's why I was wondering, because that, I was the listing agent that I could document that one.
Sure.
All right. Last one. ABC Realty has taken a listing, and there have been recent reports of drug trafficking activities in the area, including the use of drop houses. At this point, the company is only aware of the rumors to this effect. The brokerage does not have actual knowledge of any drug trafficking or related crimes in the neighborhood or surrounding area. Should the rumors of criminal activity in the surrounding area be disclosed? I'm going to say no. If the seller's decision is to not disclose, is that decision binding on the listing agent, or does the listing agent have his or her own disclosure obligations? Well, now I might have to change my first answer. So with the second answer, I mean, we're talking about. Where are the rumors and the innuendos coming from? So that's what we don't know. I personally am not feeling any responsibility or placing any responsibility on my seller just on rumors and innuendos.
And that would be correct.
Okay.
That would be correct. And that's the whole thing. It's just rumor. You know, how many people say, "Oh, but
now
I
you
read
gave
it."
Todd the right answer because he was gonna say the opposite.
No, but how many people have said, "Oh, but I heard it on TV," or "I saw it in the newspaper, so it has to be true." You know, and forget all the fake news and all the other things that we hear nowadays.
So you're guilty until proven innocent?
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
just checking.
But, so in this particular case, that's all it is rumors. And the seller says, I don't know anything about that. Do you? And we say, no, we don't know anything. And it's not been something on television or, something that's corroborated. So do you have to disclose rumors? The answer is no. But then, and so if it's the seller's decision not to disclose, is that okay? The thing that I really wanted to stress here is ARS 322156, which is the
I
stigmatized.
just read that last night.
Did you?
No.
My favorite one.
No, that one. Yeah, I've got that one so committed to memory because it comes up in so many different scenarios and circumstances. But that's the stigmatized property. Now, if the drug trafficking had taken place in that home or on that property, absolutely no, it does not have to be disclosed because that's the stigmatized property law takes that out. But now when you're talking surrounding areas, if I know that there are other things happening in that area and it is prevalent and it is known, yes, that should be a disclosure situation. But if I'm the buyer's broker, let me just go here for a second. If I'm the buyer's broker and I know that there was drug trafficking in that house, or I've heard the rumors about drug trafficking and drop houses around there, then as the buyer's broker, if there's no limited representation or dual agency, if there's none of that involved and I didn't learn about it because I had the listing, then I should tell my buyer, I truly don't know if this is happening, but here it's just a rumor and I wanted to pass it on to you because I'm their advocate. I'm the one working for them. Or if I know that it happened in that property, then I can tell them because, again, I don't have that fiduciary duty or responsibility to them.
It's this is good because 322156 is one of my faves. Obviously homicide, suicide, natural death, or any felony committed in or on the home. Obviously the seller, the transfer, or the lessor and the agent cannot be litigiously or financially liable for failing to disclose or not
Correct.
disclosing. And one of the other one is HIV/AIDS, and the third one is sex offenders. So you're a listing agent. You find out during the listing period that the seller tells you one of the reasons that they're leaving is they have a 4-year-old child and a sex offender moved in next door. And so the question is, do you need to disclose that to a buyer or not? And the answer is no. In fact, it specifically states, now the seller may want to, that's up to the seller if they give you written instruction, but just off the top, if you know it and you can't disclose it really to the
Right.
buyer's agent because you'd be stigmatizing the property. And that's kind of the whole point behind this is some people feel this super physical, moral obligation to share because the buyer that just walked up has a 5-year-old daughter. You can't.
Well, because the seller gave you lawful legal instruction
Instructions,
when
right.
they said no. And if you have this moral feeling about it, and let's say you're the listing agent and they've told you this, but they say, I don't want to disclose it. And you say, I can't do that. Then walk away from that
You have the
listing.
right to leave it.
And that is a time, then no, you don't share that with other people.
Interesting. All right, learned a lot today.
Good job, Dean.
Yeah. I'll be calling you in a few minutes,
Marge.
pal.
Good job, you guys.
All right, Marge, appreciate it. Really good stuff today. Really in depth. Now, I just know that next time Marge is on, we're going to print out every document and the table.
Oh, I brought it for you.
All right. Good stuff. Leave everybody with the quote of the day. Confidence is contagious. Believe in your value, and others will too. Appreciate everybody joining us. Go out and sell a home.